My fiance sold our engagement for a $10 million check, so I married the man who owns the bank. I gave him my heart and my business strategy. He gave my chair to another woman. The champagne cork popped like a gunshot in the marble boardroom, and I flinched. It wasn't supposed to sound like an execution, but there I stood, holding a bouquet of white roses I'd bought myself, watching Marcus hand a small velvet box to Chloe Ashford, daughter of Ashford Capital, heiress to old money, and apparently my replacement. "Evelyn," Marcus said, not even having the decency to look uncomfortable. His voice had that practiced smoothness he used when closing deals, when convincing investors that their concerns were unfounded, when lying. "You've been a great partner, truly, but Chloe brings something to the table that we need right now. Something substantial." Something substantial. $10 million substantial, according to the merger agreement spread across the conference table like autopsy reports. I'd helped draft the preliminary terms myself 3 weeks ago, back when I thought the strategic partnership Marcus kept mentioning involved my family's company, not my expulsion from it. "We had an agreement," I said, and hated how small my voice sounded in that vaulted room. The roses trembled in my hands. "We had a relationship," Marcus corrected, finally meeting my eyes. His were the color of expensive whiskey, the kind that burned going down. "Business is business, Evie. Surely you understand that." Chloe giggled, actually giggled, as she opened the box to reveal a ring that could have funded a startup. It was bigger than mine had been. Of course it was. "I've prepared a sevens package for you," Marcus continued, sliding a folder across the table. "Generous, considering the circumstances. Enough to relocate, start fresh somewhere else. Maybe the West Coast? I hear Portland is nice." I looked at the folder, at the man I'd spent 3 years building a future with, at the company I'd poured my expertise into, the late nights and early mornings, the presentations I'd perfected while he took credit in front of the board, at Chloe, who was already texting someone about the ring, probably her mother, definitely not reading the fine print of what she was actually marrying into. "Keep your money," I said, and set the roses on top of the severance package. White petals scattered across the numbers like snow on a grave. "I don't need your charity, Marcus." "Actually, you do," he said, and there was something sharp in his voice now, something that made me realize this had been planned longer than I thought. "Check page 7, the non-compete clause. You signed it when we got engaged, remember, as a show of good faith?" I remembered. God, I remembered. I'd been so stupidly in love, so eager to prove I was committed to our future, to our merged vision. The clause prevented me from working in corporate strategy or operations within the same industry for 5 years. At the time, it hadn't mattered. We were supposed to be building an empire together. Now it was a noose. "That's unenforceable," I said, but my voice cracked. "Try me," Marcus replied. "I have lawyers who disagree. Good luck finding anyone willing to hire you once I make a few calls." The room tilted. Or maybe I did. I turned and walked toward the door, each step echoing like a countdown. Behind me, I heard Chloe ask if they should still do the champagne toast, and Marcus laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Why not? We're celebrating after all." The rain hit me the moment I stepped outside, as if the universe had been waiting for the perfect, pathetic fallacy. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't have a car. I'd sold mine last month to help with what Marcus had called temporary cash flow issues. I didn't have anywhere to go. My apartment was in Marcus's building, technically his property, and I had a sinking feeling the locks would be changed before I could pack my things. I walked. Not toward anything, just away. The city blurred around me, glass and steel dissolving into watercolor. My phone buzzed with texts from my mother asking about the rehearsal dinner, from my sister wanting to know what I was wearing to the wedding, from vendors confirming details of an event that would never happen. I turned it off. The diner appeared out of the rain like a lighthouse, all harsh fluorescent and red vinyl, and the smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. I stumbled inside, dripping onto the checkered floor, and collapsed into a booth by the window. Rough day? The waitress was somewhere in her 60s with kind eyes and a name tag that read Dottie. Rough life, I said. She brought me coffee without asking, and a slice of pie that I didn't order but apparently looked like I needed. I wrapped my hands around the mug and tried to remember how to breathe. That's when he sat down across from me. "You're sitting in my booth," he said. I looked up. The man was big, not tall exactly, but broad in a way of someone who'd done physical labor, with shoulders that strained against a worn flannel shirt and hands that looked like they could crush the coffee mug he was holding. His face was weathered, stubbled, with gray threading through dark hair that needed a cut. He looked like he'd walked off a construction site and forgotten to leave the exhaustion behind. "Sorry," I said automatically, starting to gather my things. "Didn't say you had to move," he said, settling into the opposite seat. "Just making conversation." We sat in silence for a moment. Dottie brought him coffee without him asking either. Apparently, this was his place. "You look like someone stole your last $20, he said. "Worse, they stole my future and gave me a severance package." He grunted, which might have been sympathy. "Corporate?" "Was. Now I'm nothing." "Nobody's nothing," he said, and took a sip of his coffee. "You got a place to stay?" The question was so direct it almost didn't register. I shook my head. "Family?" "Complicated. My parents mortgaged everything to invest in Marcus's company. They'd be devastated, humiliated, probably blame me for not keeping him interested. My sister was a lawyer who'd warned me about the non-compete, who I'd dismissed as being paranoid. Friends? I thought about my circle, all Marcus's colleagues' wives and girlfriends, all the connections I'd made through him. Not anymore. He studied me for a long moment, and I had the strange feeling of being appraised, measured against some internal metric I couldn't see. "I've got a proposition for you," he said. "Might sound crazy, but hear me out." I laughed, bitter and sharp. I've had enough propositions for one day. "This one's different. It's business." He leaned back, and despite the casual posture, there was something calculated about it. "I need a wife. Temporary arrangement. My grandmother's will stipulates I have to be married to claim my inheritance. Lawyer says a legal contract marriage counts. You need a roof over your head and time to figure out your next move. Seems like a fair trade." I stared at him. "You're joking." "Do I look like I joke?" He didn't. He looked serious as a heart attack, as Marcus's betrayal, as the rain still hammering against the diner windows. "You don't even know me," I said. "I know you're desperate enough to hear me out. I know you're sitting in my booth at 3 in the afternoon looking like the world ended. I know you're smart enough to have had a corporate job and proud enough to refuse whatever severance package they offered." He tilted his head. "That enough? What's in it for you?" "Told you. Inheritance. Old family money, trust fund thing. Ridiculous stipulation, but lawyers say it's binding." "Why me? Why not find someone actually looking for this arrangement?" "Because those people want something long-term or romantic, or they're looking for a payday. You want survival. That's honest. I can work with honest." The pie sat untouched on my plate. The coffee had gone lukewarm. Outside, the rain showed no signs of stopping. "I don't even know your name," I said. He extended a hand across the table. "Silas. Silas Thorne." I took it. His grip was firm, calloused, real. "Evelyn Vance." "So, Evelyn Vance, you want to get married?" I should have said no. Should have walked out, found a shelter, called my sister and eaten crow, done literally anything else. But there was something in his eyes, something steady and unflinching, that made me feel, for the first time in hours, like I wasn't drowning. "Okay," I said. "Yes." His house was not what I expected. We'd driven in silence through rain-slicked streets in a truck that had seen better days, and I'd constructed an entire mental image of where we were headed. A small apartment, maybe a rundown rental, something that matched the flannel and the diner coffee. Instead, we pulled up to a gate that looked like it belonged to an embassy. Silas punched in a code, and the iron bars slid open with the kind of smooth precision that cost serious money. "I thought you said you were between jobs," I said, staring at the mansion materializing through the rain. "I said I was retired. Construction paid well." The house was modern minimalist on the outside, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, set back from the road and surrounded by enough land that you couldn't see the neighbors. Inside, it was even more disorienting. High-tech everything, from the lights that adjusted automatically to the security system that seemed to have cameras in every corner. "Guest rooms upstairs, second door on the left," Silas said, shrugging out of his wet jacket. Underneath, he wore a plain black t-shirt that showed arms more sculpted than any construction worker I'd ever seen. "You'll have your own bathroom. Kitchen's through there. Make yourself at home." "Is this home?" I asked. He gave me a look I couldn't quite decipher. "It's a building. Home's what you make it." The guest room was bigger than my old apartment, with a bed that could sleep four and a view of gardens that probably required a full-time groundskeeper. I stood at the window, watching the rain, and tried to process the last 6 hours of my life. There was a knock on the doorframe. Silas stood there with a stack of towels and what looked like a brand new toothbrush still in its packaging. "Figured you might need these. We can get your things tomorrow." "Where from?" "Marcus's building, but I doubt—" "I'll handle it," he said, with a finality that suggested the conversation was over. We should probably talk about the arrangement. We sat in what he called the library, but what was actually a room full of leather-bound books that looked expensive and unread, with a fireplace that probably cost more than my college education. Silas had changed into jeans and a gray Henley, and with his hair damp from a shower, he looked almost civilized. "Simple terms," he said, pulling out a folder. Of course he had a folder ready. "Marriage is legal but contractual. 1 year minimum to satisfy the trust requirements. You get room, board, and a living stipend. I get access to my inheritance. After the year, we divorce, you get a settlement that should set you up nicely, and we both move on." "What about the non-compete?" I asked. "What about it?" "Marcus basically blacklisted me. I can't work in my field." Silas was quiet for a moment. "What if I told you I could get around that?" "How?" "Let's just say I have connections. People who don't care what your ex-fiancé thinks." I wanted to ask what kind of retired construction worker had those kinds of connections, but I was too tired to care. Too tired to question why this stranger was willing to help me, or what he really got out of this arrangement beyond access to family money he clearly didn't need. "When do we do this?" I asked instead. "City Hall tomorrow, if you're ready. Small ceremony, just us and witnesses. Clean and legal." I laughed, sharp and painful. I was supposed to have a wedding next month, 300 guests, ice sculpture, live orchestra. "Sounds expensive." It was, or it would have been. Marcus's mother was planning it. She never liked me anyway, probably thrilled she doesn't have to pretend anymore. Silas poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. Whiskey, probably older than I was. He handed me one. "To new beginnings," he said. I touched my glass to his. "To survival." The whiskey burned, but in a good way, in a way that felt like cauterizing a wound. We got married on a Tuesday at 10 in the morning. I wore a cream dress I found in the guest room closet. Silas claimed his sister had left it, though I had my doubts he had a sister. It fit perfectly. He wore a suit that transformed him from rough-edged to dangerously handsome, all sharp lines and controlled power. The witnesses were 2 people Silas introduced as friends, a woman named Kate who looked like she could kill someone with her briefcase, and a man named Dimitri who had the build of a bodyguard and the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. They both called him Sir when they thought I wasn't listening. The ceremony took 7 minutes. The officiant asked if we took each other. We said we did, and suddenly I was Evelyn Thorne, married to a man I'd known for less than 48 hours. "You okay?" Silas asked as we walked back to his truck. I looked at the marriage certificate in my hands, at the ring he'd slipped on my finger, simple, platinum band, elegant and expensive, at the man who was technically now my husband. "Ask me in a year," I said. The first week passed in a strange domestic limbo. Silas disappeared for hours each day, claiming errands or meetings about the inheritance. I tried to make myself useful, organizing the house, cooking meals he rarely ate, attempting to figure out what my life was supposed to be now. My things arrived from Marcus's building in boxes I didn't pack, delivered by movers who treated everything like it might explode. Everything was there, down to the photo albums and the lingerie I'd bought for a honeymoon that would never happen. Silas somehow made it happen without Marcus creating a scene. "How did you manage this?" I asked, standing in my new room surrounded by my old life. "I asked nicely," Silas said, which was clearly a lie. I started to notice things, small things at first. The way people called the house at odd hours, and Silas would take the calls in his office with the door closed. The way delivery people would leave packages and practically bow on their way out. The way Kate and Dimitri kept showing up, always professional, always deferring to Silas like he was something more than a retiree with an inheritance problem. It was Kate who finally gave me a lead. She showed up one morning with coffee and a proposition. "Silas mentioned you have a background in corporate strategy," she said, settling into the kitchen like she owned it. "Had," I corrected. Past tense. I'm currently unemployable. "What if I told you I could know a company that could use your expertise? Consulting work, all anonymous. No one would ever know your real name." "What company?" "Thorne International. Ever heard of it?"
I had. Everyone in the corporate world had. Thorne International was a conglomerate that owned pieces of everything: tech, real estate, manufacturing, media. They were known for being ruthless in negotiations and brilliant in execution. They were also notoriously private, run by a reclusive CEO no one ever saw. "The Ghost CEO," I said, using the industry nickname. Kate smiled. "That's the one. Interested?" "Why would they want me?" "Because you're good at what you do. Because you think 3 moves ahead. Because Silas vouched for you." "Silas knows people at Thorne International?" "You could say that." Kate pulled out a tablet and slid it across the counter. "Here's the first assignment. A company called Vance & Co. is attempting a merger with Ashford Capital. We need someone to analyze their strategy and find the weaknesses." My blood went cold. Vance & Co. That's Marcus's company. "I know," Kate said. "Is that a problem?" I looked at the tablets, at Marcus's name on the documents, at the merger I'd helped him plan, the one that had cost me everything. "No," I said slowly, "that's not a problem at all." I worked from Silas's office. He insisted I use it while he was out, said the setup was better than what I'd have elsewhere. He wasn't wrong. The computer system was state-of-the-art with access to databases and analytics tools I'd dreamed about at Vance & Co. Someone had even loaded my preferred software and set up my ideal workspace layout. The work was intoxicating. I tore through Marcus's merger plans like I was performing surgery, identifying every weakness, every overconfident assumption, every place where he'd cut corners or inflated projections. I knew how he thought, knew his tells, knew exactly where to apply pressure to make the whole thing collapse. I delivered my analysis to Kate after 3 days. She read it, smiled that sharp smile of hers, and said, "You're going to be very valuable to us, Evelyn." I haven't even started yet. Oh, honey, you started the moment you married Silas. I wanted to ask what she meant, but Silas came home then, and Kate vanished into whatever mysterious errand she did for him. He looked tired, shoulders tight with tension I was learning to recognize. "Long day?" I asked. "Complicated day," he corrected, pulling off his jacket. He'd taken to wearing suits lately, expensive ones that fit him like they were custom-made, which they probably were. "I started the consulting work," I said. "For Thorn International?" Something flickered across his face. "Yeah? How's it going?" "Good. Really good, actually. Feels nice to use my brain again." He smiled then, real and warm. "Good. You deserve that." We'd fallen into a routine of sorts. Dinner together when he was home, quiet evenings in separate corners of the house, occasional conversations that felt almost normal. He never pushed into my space, never made me feel like the arrangements was anything other than what we'd agreed, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite name, something between curiosity and concern. "Can I ask you something?" I said that night, over pasta I'd made from a recipe I found in his absurdly well-stocked kitchen. "Sure." "Honestly, why me? You could have hired anyone for this arrangement, someone who wouldn't ask questions or notice things or care about your weird friends and military-grade security system." Silas set down his fork, considering. "You want the honest answer?" "Always. Because you were real. Everyone in my world wants something from me, has an angle, plays a game. You were just trying to survive. That's rare." "You felt sorry for me." "I felt respect for you," he corrected. "There's a difference." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and we finished dinner in companionable silence. It was a month into the marriage when I found it. I was looking for a book Silas had mentioned, something about military strategy he thought I'd like, and opened the wrong closet in his study. Instead of books, I found a wall of accolades, plaques, awards, magazine covers, and there, right in the center, was a Forbes 30 Under 20 feature. The headline read, "Silas Thorn, 28, the ghost CEO of Thorn International." I stood there, staring at a photo of my husband, younger, cleaner cut, but unmistakably him, shaking hands with the Prime Minister. The article detailed his meteoric rise, his unconventional management style, his reputation for destroying competitors and building empires. My husband, the ghost CEO, the man whose company I'd been consulting for, the man who'd been letting me tear apart Marcus's business while pretending to be a blue-collar construction worker with an inheritance problem. I heard footsteps behind me and spun around. Silas stood in the doorway, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd claimed to attend. His face was unreadable. "I can explain," he said. "You're Silas Thorn, the Silas Thorn, Thorn International Silas." "Yes." "You let me think you were, what, some blue-collar guy with family money?" "I never lied," I told you carefully. "I was retired from construction. I built that company from the ground up. And I do have family money. It's just that I'm the one who made it." I laughed, slightly hysterical. "And the inheritance, the grandmother's will?" "Real. She died 5 years ago. Left everything in a trust that requires marriage to access. Old-fashioned woman. Thought I needed settling down." He stepped into the room. "I could have married anyone. I chose you." "Why?" "Because I saw you in that diner and recognized someone who'd been betrayed by someone they trusted. Because I knew Marcus Vance, knew his reputation, his company, his ambitions, and I thought you deserved better than being discarded like you were disposable." "So this is what? Charity? Revenge by proxy?" "It's opportunity," he said, "for both of us. You get to rebuild your life on your terms. I get to watch Marcus Vance realize he threw away the only thing that made his company work." I wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at the deception, the manipulation, the fact that he'd been pulling strings this entire time. But underneath the shock, I felt something else. Relief. "The consulting work," I said. "That was you setting up my revenge?"
That was me giving you the tools to take what was yours. What you chose to do with them was up to you. We stood there in the study, surrounded by the evidence of everything he'd built, everything he'd hidden from me. The distance between us felt like miles and inches all at once. I should be furious with you, I said. You should be, he agreed. But I'm not. I stopped, trying to find the word. I'm grateful and terrified and completely out of my depth. Welcome to my world, he said, and there was something vulnerable in it, something that made me realize he'd been just as uncertain about all this as I was. What happens now? I asked. That depends. Do you want to keep going, keep working, keep building your new life, or do you want out? I thought about Marcus, about the merger that was probably already starting to crack under the pressure of my analysis. I thought about the power I'd felt, tearing apart his strategies, knowing I was the architect of his downfall. I thought about this house, this strange marriage, this man who'd given me a weapon and trusted me to know how to use it. I want to finish what we started, I said. Silas smiled, slow and dangerous. Then let's destroy him. Over the next 2 months, I became a ghost myself. Every strategy Marcus implemented, I countered. Every investor he courted, I warned off through carefully placed analysis. Every expansion he planned, I found the fatal flaw and made sure the right people saw it. The work consumed me, in the best possible way. I'd wake at dawn and lose myself in spreadsheets and market analyses. I knew Marcus's patterns better than anyone. I knew he always overestimated his Q4 performance. I knew he had a tendency to promise deliverables he couldn't meet. I knew exactly which investors he'd approach and exactly what lies he'd tell them. And I made sure those investors knew too. The first major blow came from Ashford Capital announced they were reassessing the strategic fits of the merger. Chloe's father had seen my analysis of Marcus's cooked books delivered anonymously to his CFO and realized his son-in-law-to-be was not the golden boy he'd pretended to be. I heard through Kate that Marcus had tried to pin the collapse on Chloe, that they'd had a screaming match in the Ashford Capital boardroom, that she'd thrown her engagement ring at him and moved back in with her parents. The second blow came from the tech sector. Marcus had been courting a Silicon Valley firm for months, promising them exclusive access to manufacturing channels he'd assured them Vance & Co. controlled. I knew we didn't control those channels. I'd been the one who tried and failed to negotiate them years ago. So I made a few calls and ensured those manufacturing partners were locked into contracts with other companies before Marcus could even make his pitch. The deal fell through spectacularly. The tech firm's CEO tweeted about corporate dishonesty, and Marcus's reputation took another hit. "You're enjoying this," Silas observed one evening, finding me in the office at midnight, still working. "Is that wrong?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. "Not at all," he said, setting down a cup of tea I hadn't asked for but appreciated. He'd started doing that, bringing me tea, making sure I ate, occasionally insisting I take breaks. It was domestic and strange and made my chest feel tight in a way I couldn't quite name. Vance & Co. started hemorrhaging value. The stock price dropped 30% in a month. Key employees started jumping ship. The office building that Marcus had been so proud of, the one with his name on it, went on the market. I watched it all happen from behind the anonymity of Thorne International's consulting division, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. But there were moments, quiet ones in the early morning or late at night, when I'd catch myself wondering if I was becoming the same kind of person Marcus was, someone who saw people as chess pieces, someone who destroyed without remorse. I shared these thoughts with Silas one night over dinner. "You're nothing like him," Silas said firmly. "Marcus hurt you for profit. You're holding him accountable for what he did. There's a difference." "Is there?" I asked. "How do you know where the line is?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't always," he admitted. "I've done things in business that kept me up at night, but I try to have a code. I don't destroy for sport. I don't betray people who trust me, and I don't punish people who don't deserve it." "Marcus deserves it," I said. "Yes, he does." "He's desperate," Kate reported during one of our weekly meetings. "Started reaching out to every major player for a bailout, including us." "What did you tell him?" I asked. She grinned. "That we'd consider it. Set up a meeting for next week. Silas thought you might want to be there." The week leading up to the gala felt like preparing for war. The dress arrived 3 days early, along with shoes, jewelry, and a team of people whose only job was to make me look like I belonged in that world. Silas found me the night before the gala, standing in front of the mirror in my room, trying on the dress one more time. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can end it here. He's already finished." "I want to see his face," I said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "I want him to know it was me, that the woman he threw away became the one who ended him." "Then wear the dress like armor," Silas said, stepping closer. He placed his hands on my shoulders and I leaned back against him slightly. In the mirror, we looked like a unit, like a couple who belonged together, like something real. "Silas," I said softly, "after tomorrow, after it's done, what happens to us?" His grip on my shoulders tightened fractionally. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know what's real anymore. This marriage, this life, us. Was any of it real, or was it all just part of the plan?" He turned me around to face him, his hands moving to cup my face. "You're real, Evelyn. What you've built, what you've become, that's all real. As for us," he paused, searching my face. "I guess we'll find out." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Get some sleep," he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Tomorrow, you take back everything he stole from you." The Founders Gala was Thorn International's annual event, invitation only, where deals were made and careers were ended. Marcus had been trying to get into it for years. Now, desperate and drowning, he'd finally received his invitation, along with a chance to pitch his failing company to the ghost CEO himself. Silas found me in my room the night before, staring at a dress he'd had delivered. It was black, elegant, powerful, the kind of dress that made statements. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can end it here. He's already finished." "I want to see his face," I said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "I want him to know it was me, that the woman he threw away became the one who ended him." "Then wear the dress like armor," Silas said, stepping closer. He placed his hands on my shoulders and I leaned back against him slightly. In the mirror, we looked like a unit, like a couple who belonged together, like something real. "Silas," I said softly, "after tomorrow, after it's done, what happens to us?" His grip on my shoulders tightened fractionally. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know what's real anymore. This marriage, this life, us. Was any of it real, or was it all just part of the plan?" He turned me around to face him, his hands moving to cup my face. "You're real, Evelyn. What you've built, what you've become, that's all real. As for us," he paused, searching my face. "I guess we'll find out." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Get some sleep," he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Tomorrow, you take back everything he stole from you." The Founders Gala was Thorn International's annual event, invitation only, where deals were made and careers were ended. Marcus had been trying to get into it for years. Now, desperate and drowning, he'd finally received his invitation, along with a chance to pick. The gala was held in a hotel ballroom that dripped with old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers, orchestra playing softly, servers circulating with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's rent. I walked in on Silas's arm and felt every eye in the room turn toward us. Because this was the reveal, the ghost CEO finally making an appearance. And on his arm, a woman no one recognized but everyone would remember. Marcus saw me before I saw him. I heard the glass shatter, heard someone curse, and turned to find him standing there, champagne soaking into his shirt, face white with shock. "Evelyn?" he said, like my name was a question, like I might be a ghost. "Hello, Marcus," I said, and my voice was steady, cold, perfect. He looked between me and Silas, trying to make sense of it. "What are you doing here? Who?" "Marcus Vance," Silas said, extending a hand. "Silas Thorne, we've been expecting you." I watched understanding dawn on Marcus's face, watched him realize who Silas was, who I was now, what this all meant. Watched him understand that the anonymous consultant who'd been systematically destroying his company was his ex-fiancée. That the bailout he'd come begging for would be decided by the woman he'd discarded. "You," he said, looking at me, "you've been working?" I supplied. "Yes. Funny how valuable I became the moment I wasn't tied to you." "This is insane," he said. "You can't—" "Actually," Silas interrupted, "she can, and she has. Your company is valued at approximately 15% of what it was 6 months ago. The merger failed, your investors are fleeing, you're here because you're desperate." Marcus's face went red. "You sabotaged me, both of you." "We didn't have to," I said. "We just exposed all the weaknesses that were already there, all the places where you cut corners, inflated numbers, relied on my work without understanding it. You sabotaged yourself, Marcus. We just helped it along." "Evelyn, please," he said, and there was something pathetic in it. "We can fix this. I made a mistake. I see that now. We can nothing," I said. "You made your choice. You chose Chloe and her father's money. You chose to betray me, to blacklist me, to treat me like I was disposable. Now you get to live with those choices." Silas cleared his throat. "As for the bailout, Thorne International has decided to make you an offer. We'll acquire Vance & Co. for $1 and assume all debts. In return, you'll step down as CEO immediately. The company will be restructured under new leadership." "New leadership?" Marcus asked. "My wife," Silas said, placing a hand on my back. "Evelyn Thorne will be taking over as chairwoman. I believe she's familiar with the company." The ballroom had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, witnessing Marcus Vance's complete and utter destruction at the hands of the woman he'd thrown away. "This isn't over," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "It is," I replied. "It's been over since the moment you handed me that severance package. You just didn't know it yet." He left, stumbling through the crowd, and I watched him go without a shred of regret. Silas leaned down, his mouth close to my ear. "How does it feel?" "Like I can breathe again," I said. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of congratulations and introductions. Everyone wanted to meet the ghost CEO's mysterious wife, the woman who'd somehow brought down Marcus Vance. I smiled, shook hands, played the part perfectly. But later, back at the house, alone in the quiet, the weight of it all crashed down. I found Silas in his study, tie loosened, jacket discarded, looking at contracts I couldn't read from the doorway. "It's done," I said. "It is," he agreed, looking up. "You were magnificent tonight." "I couldn't have done it without you. With all of this," I gestured vaguely at the house, the life, the resources he'd given me. "You would have found a way," he said. "You're that kind of person." I moved into the room, sat in the chair across from his desk. "The contract," I said. "Our contract. We agreed on a year. It's been 6 months." Something shifted in his expression. "It has. And I've been thinking—" I stopped, trying to find the words. "I've been thinking that maybe we should talk about what happens next." "What do you want to happen?" he asked carefully. "I don't know," I admitted. 6 months ago, I wanted revenge. I wanted to hurt Marcus the way he hurt me. I wanted to prove I was worth more than he thought. And now, Now I've done all that. I have a company to run, a career to rebuild, a future that's mine, and I keep wondering what I'm doing in this house, in this marriage, with you. Silas stood, came around the desk, and leaned against it so he was closer to me. Do you want to leave? The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. I should want to leave, I said. This was supposed to be temporary, a business arrangement. We've both gotten what we needed from it. That's not an answer. No, it's not. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was gentle, intimate, nothing like the calculated businessman or the mysterious CEO, just Silas looking at me like I was something precious. The contract was fake, he said quietly. The inheritance, the grandmother's will, all of it was real, but I didn't need to marry you to access it. I could have fought it, hired better lawyers, waited it out. My heart stuttered. Then why? Because I saw you in that diner, drowning and defiant, and I wanted to know what you'd do if someone threw you a lifeline. Because Marcus Vance had been on my radar for years as someone who needed to be taken down, and you were the perfect weapon. Because, he stopped, jaw tight. Because I'm not a good man, Evelyn. I'm ruthless and calculating, and I saw an opportunity. To use me? To help you, to give you what you deserved, to watch you become everything you were meant to be. He cupped my face in his hands. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about revenge or business or strategic plays. It became about you, about coming home to find you in my kitchen, about the way you argue with my analysts, about the fact that you wear my ring like it means something. It does mean something, I whispered. What does it mean, Evelyn? I stood, closing the distance between us until we were breath close. It means I don't want to leave. It means the contract might have been business, but this, us, isn't anymore. It means I'm terrified because 6 months ago I was destroyed by a man I thought I loved, and now now you're what? He prompted, and his voice was rough with something that sounded like hope. Now I'm falling for a man who gave me my power, who saw me at my worst and thought I was worth saving, who built me an empire and let me burn down the people who hurt me. I kissed him then, soft and sure. Now I'm falling for my husband. He kissed me back, and it was nothing like the chaste kiss we'd shared at City Hall 6 months ago. This was real, burning, full of all the tension we'd been dancing around since the beginning. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. The contract expires in 6 months, he said. So we write a new one. What kind of contract? I smiled against his lips. The kind that doesn't expire. The kind where I'm not your business arrangement or your revenge plot or your convenient wife. The kind where we're just us. Just us, he repeated, like he was testing the words. I like the sound of that. Good, I said, because you're stuck with me, Silas Thorne. You gave me an empire and taught me how to rule it. Now you get to live with the consequences. He laughed, pulling me closer. I can think of worse fates. Outside, the city lights glittered like promises. Inside, the man who saved me and the woman who saved herself held each other in the ruins of a contract marriage that had become real. Marcus Vance was gone, his company mine, his betrayal avenged. But standing there in Silas's arms, I realized revenge had never been the point. Power hadn't been the point. The point had been finding out who I was when I wasn't defined by someone else's expectations. The point had been learning that I was worth more than any severance package, any ring, any merger agreement. The point had been becoming Evelyn Thorne. And that was worth everything.